Hello, and welcome back to Harp History with Haley. Today we're going to be covering the Romantic era, but if you want to know more about previous eras, check out my Baroque and Classical videos. The Romantic era was approximately from 1800 to 1910. And for my young students out there, the Romantic era wasn't just about ooey gooey love stuff. This term came from the concept of Romanticism, which put an emphasis on emotion, individualism, or drama, and Romantic music was often inspired by nature or poetry. As with the Classical era, the orchestra began to expand, but now composers are starting to write with more chromatic harmonies. Harpists tend to love the Romantic era because that's when our instrument really started to become popular. More and more composers were adding harp parts to their orchestral scores, and because of the double action pedal harp, we were able to keep up with the more chromatic music being written. And this goes for solo harp music as well. But just to name some of the composers, we had Tchaikovsky, Wagner, Mahler, Strauss, Berlioz, Smetana, and Brahms, all including one or more harp parts in their scores. So moving on to solo repertoire, the first composer I wanted to mention was Louis Spoor. He was a German composer and violinist, and his wife was a harpist. So he would write duets for them that they would perform together. The most well-known harp piece of his is the Fantasia for Harp in C minor. And the fun story about this piece is that Dorette, his wife, had always played a single action pedal harp until she premiered this piece. She decided to play the double action pedal harp. Well, apparently she hated it and she walked off stage saying something like she'd never play this nerve-wracking instrument ever again. Next we have Saint-Saëns, a composer, organist, and conductor. And harpists often play arrangements of The Swan from Carnival of the Animals, but he did compose solo and chamber works for the harp. One of my personal favorites is the Fantasy for solo harp. I find it to be simple yet very emotional. Alvarez was a composer and a harpist, and his piece Serenade is very well known for its extended use of harmonics in the opening section, which can be very difficult to execute with sometimes quadruple harmonics at once. In early editions of this work, the cadenza would include a chromatic glissando that was to be done with the metal end of a tuning key. In editions today, it's usually omitted due to its difficulty in execution. Another technique that was used was pedal glissandi, which can be heard in many later works by other composers. Pierné was a French conductor, composer, pianist, and organist, and as a student of the Paris Conservatoire, Pierné was exposed to many great harpists. In 1903, he composed Concertstück, which was a one-movement concerto for harp, and this was premiered by the famous Henrietta Renier. So as mentioned earlier, Romantic composers often drew inspiration from nature. And because the harp is often a flowy and peaceful sounding instrument, we have many pieces with water themes. Two of these pieces are Am Springbrunnen by Zabel and La Source by Hasselmans. Zabel was a composer and harpist with the Imperial Ballet of St. Petersburg, and he composed many works for the harp. Hasselmans was also a composer and harpist and a professor at the Paris Conservatoire, who had many famous important harp students such as Renier, Tournier, Salzedo, Grandgeny, Laskin, and Jamet. So that wraps up the Romantic era. Please let me know how you liked this video in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.